Deputy Clare Day.
Thanks, Ceann Comhairle. I think it was something a little bit sad, really, listening to Minister Howland, like the little fella in the playground, bragging to the big lads about all the sweets he's given out, and the lads nudging themselves going, well, we haven't seen any evidence of any sweets here. And I really think he was protesting too much, bragging about social welfare rates increasing under the last government, when in reality that was a reflection of the social welfare and the wealth transfer to the wealthy, and the compensation for the poor wages that are being paid. Because I thought the government's whole strategy is completely wrong, and was summed up by Minister Noonan's remarks when he talked about the economic recovery being most clearly evident in the labour market. Well, this is precisely the area where the problems in the Irish economy are the most evident, because unlike in the past, when even in the 1950s we went out of this country and got workers back from Britain to build houses in this state, or even not so long ago when a fella could leave school and get a job in a local authority which was permanent and pensionable, now we have the spectre of graduates working in repeated internships or job bridge schemes for low wages. We now know that our new recruits in the public sector, be they guards or nurses, actually get less per hour than a worker in Aldi or Lidl. And this is the race to the bottom, and we are building a low-wage economy based on neoliberal economic policies, which the Stability Programme is designed to perpetuate and develop even further. Now, the programme update tells us that we are formally exiting the excessive deficit procedure this summer. Should be great cause for celebration, hooray, hooray. But we should remind ourselves as we pop the champagne why we were in this programme in the first place, and the fact that the Irish public has been shackled and put on the hook for billions of gambling debts that we had no part or hand to act in the first place. And of course now we're told that we're coming out of the EDP, we're straight into, in reality, the new austerity, the preventative measures and arms of the Stability and Growth Pact. We have to achieve our MTO, and Deputy Doherty is correct. There has been a change put forward here today, and it's a little bit sickening and insulting to democracy that we have a government that has zero mandate from the electorate. Let's face it, ye took an absolute hounding. Ye have no authority to endorse any document going forward in the name of the Irish people, and yet that is what is being done here today. To me, it's a disgrace, and it is only being done because you're doffing the cap yet again to the EU Commission officials who made it quite clear in the bilateral talks with the Irish delegation on the 6th of April that they expected Dublin to make a submission on time. So ye said, that's grand, master, no problem, we'll do that. Now, the problem with all of this really is what we have is institutionalised neoliberalism, budgetary surveillance by unelected bureaucrats in the European Commission, which was obviously enshrined as a result of the six-pack agreement. And Deputy Wallace is absolutely correct in that regard. The six-pack is one of the reasons offered for why we can't borrow money to build social housing, because that would push us over the 3% central government deficit of GDP. It's an absolute nonsense, an insult to democracy. And in a recent article, Professor John Weeks at the University of London talked about really the authoritarianism of the EU and the six-pack when he said it asserts the power of the unelected European Commission as the executive of the European Union to monitor, aka detect, whether the public budget of an elected member government conforms to EU fiscal rules. If it does not, the Commission claims the power to prevent the implementation of that budget, then to specify the changes required. Is this the democracy that the Taoiseach told us was so wonderful about the EU here in the Dáil last week? In actual fact, what we're signing up to here is enforced perpetual economic stagnation in Europe. Economies which in the past could have effectively used their budgets to stimulate public expenditure and growth are now being hamstrung in that regard. And as Professor Weeks put it much better than me, he said what we're doing is enforcing member governments to apply policies analogous to the practice 200 years ago of bloodletting to restore health to the ill. And I'm not prepared to bloodlet the Irish people any longer, but clearly a government with no mandate thinks that it can.
Thanks, Deputy.